All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to my channel. I'm Momma Atheist. And today we have DarkMatter, John, here again to talk about Stranger Things for TV Time. Welcome, John. How are you doing today?
Thank you. I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad that you came back and we can get through this whole thing again. If you want to just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
I have a fairly large channel on YouTube that I've been using to post animations regarding the atheism versus religion debate, very much on the atheist side. And let's say I started in 2008, and I've been going strong ever since.
I was thinking about this the other day. Just a bit of a coincidence. In 2008, I was teaching at a college in Connecticut, and I met Bill Nye, and we had a conversation about DarkMatter. I thought that was interesting since you started in 2008 as DarkMatter. And you also have a Twitch channel that is very cool.
Thank you.
You do gaming stuff as God, your character, and you also have chats, which I think is really neat because you get to connect with your fans and just like have a laid back chat about stuff. And
yeah.
Are you really enjoying that? How long have you been doing your Twitch streams?
Yeah, I mean I just recently started that this year, so that's very new to me. I still have to get used to speaking extemporaneously. Just off the cuff stuff. I'm not very good at, because most of my videos are scripted. So I'm doing more stuff like this to get better at it. The Twitch channel, that's another outlet to get my voice out there, and hopefully that goes well too.
And I have all the links, including all your links, including the Twitch one in the stream. So you guys should absolutely check it out. It's a lot of fun. It's, not a ton of people. So you actually get to, engage with you. It's very fun.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Yeah. That's one thing I miss about having a smaller channel is, recognizing everybody and engaging with everybody. On my YouTube channel, it's mostly just one way. It's mostly just posting the video and maybe answering a few comments, but it's always different people every time. But with the new Twitch channel, it's still small, so I still recognize everyone and can chat more easily.
Yeah, and it's very cool to have that, and then, like I said, I really enjoy going there and chatting with everybody and getting to listen to you. So I think you're doing great.
Thank you.
So today we're talking about Stranger Things. I know you did this last week, but just again, if you want to summarize what the show is in your own words.
I believe I summarized it as a Stephen King type horror thriller. It was directed by Steven Spielberg, so the best of Stevens.
Yes.
and I think it does a really good job of that. I don't know if you grew up in the 80s like
Yes,
I did.
I did.
But it really captures that period very well. And so it's kind of special to someone like me who recognizes all this stuff that I forgot about.
Yeah.
And it pulls you into that aesthetic, and it's special to me in that way too. But then it also goes into this story that would have been much more difficult to tell back then.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, you're right. And I think one of I see the 80s being as one of the themes of the show, but I think one of the cool things is, unlike other shows and movies that are set in different time periods, especially the 80s, it's not thrown in your face. Like, it's not, every single thing is a callback. There's the music that's really, you're like, oh, I remember that song, and you see the commercials. There was a couple of commercials I saw that I remembered. It's like, oh, I totally remember that commercial. And like the candy bars are in the wrappers from the 80s and stuff like that. It's not super played out.
The attention to detail is amazing. Like I have difficulty understanding how they do it all with these sets. Like like even the soap dispensers, I noticed, they had the little hands with the bubbles coming out, and I totally forgot about that. But when I saw that, I remember when I was a little kid going into the bathrooms and seeing those same exact soap dispensers.
Exactly.
And I would have never thought about those ever again for the rest of my life, probably, if it weren't for that show. And it was like, oh, how did they get all this stuff? Where did they get all this stuff? And how did they...
Are they making those like candy bar wrappers and the soap dispensers? Or are they actually like buying old shit? It's crazy. I thought about that too. So there's 3 seasons so far, and as good as a show it is, as good a show as it is, the first season really is the best. I mean, it is. And that's a problem with shows sometimes, though, because you come out strong because it's what the writers wanted initially, but then they move on and try to give the audience what they want, I think. So, but the first season is amazing. You want to give a tiny synopsis of it?
I agree. I think that when that first season comes out, it's a big question mark. Are people going to like this? Are they going to hate it? So they're really doing what they like, I think.
Yeah.
And maybe
it's
speculating. Art. Yeah, maybe they're speculating about what other people might like, but they're really telling the story they want to tell. I think more so. And then if they don't have a definite plan as to where the story is going to go beyond the first season, I think then it has the potential to fall off, the rails. But the first season, it definitely has its set direction. It's and it's not predictable, I don't think.
No, not at all.
But the basically this boy goes missing, and it's a big mystery as to why or how, and the acting from Winona Ryder, who plays Joyce Byers, really stood out to me. Her grief and worry was amazing.
As a mother, I felt it. Like I knew how my son's never gone missing, but there's times when he's been just late, and even then, you have this feeling in your chest. So and she conveyed that really, really well, and really honestly too. Something that her not, her saying that she felt her son, she felt that he was still alive. I understand that, and you have a child as well, so that connection you have with your kids. And the fact that she was kind of a little nuts beforehand. So when she did stuff that seemed super crazy, like the lights and everything that she put up to try to connect with her son, she wasn't crazy, but there was, everybody saw her as crazy, and she didn't give a fuck. She's just like, nope, I know my kid's still alive, and I'm going to do whatever it is I can do to get him back.
Yeah. And you get both perspectives. Like, you understand what she's doing and why she's doing it, but you also understand why other people are reacting to her that way, because it does look like crazy behavior, but it isn't in this universe, in this world where her son is basically thrust into another dimension, an upside down world, which another thing that I kind of like about this is that it keeps it a mystery. It doesn't feel the need to explain everything to you. The government is working on trying to get this gateway into this other dimension, and they have this little girl, lots of little kids, in fact, that they do these experiments on, these sensory deprivation experiments, and they kind of develop these unique abilities. And 11 she's called. She ties into the story. I'm trying to remember the first season. It's there's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, well, we have what was her name? Hold on a sec. We have, the main boys, Will, the one who disappears, along with Mike Wheeler, who's the kind of the main character, and Dustin and Lucas.
Right.
They're this friend group, and they're kind of who the story revolves around, and then you have their families and stuff.
Right.
And they run into 11 first, because 11 escapes from the government facility that she's been held at her entire life. She was essentially kidnapped from her mother when she was born, and taken to do all these experiments on. So she doing all these ESP things. She's the one who ends up opening this door into what is known as the Upside Down, and that's how the monster from there, the Demogorgon, comes out and kidnaps Will and takes him into the Upside Down. But like you said, they don't spell it all out at first. And part of that is because 11 has no idea how to connect with people or society, be a normal person. Also, she doesn't really speak. She's the one who knows the most, but she doesn't speak that much because she doesn't know how to talk with people. Right. One of the first scenes is when she's left home alone and just gets to explore the house. Do you remember that one?
Yeah. And that's some of this is what reminds me of Spielberg, kind of like E.T. at home alone, exploring the world for the first time. I kind of see a similarity there. She's not an alien, but she's like alien to the world, to the regular world that we know, and she has powers that we don't have, and so she's special in that way, and she's being hunted, just like E.T. was. That's why this first season reminded me so much of E.T. and hence Spielberg. But
there are actually a couple things. I thought that E.T. was kind of one of the themes, because actually that what I was just talking about when she was alone in the house, that's very similar to when E.T. was alone in the house, and he fiddles with the TV and he explores. She does the same thing. It's very congruent with that. And then in the second season too, there's a little tiny bit when Will is asked by that doctor what his favorite candy is, and he says Reese's Pieces. There are a few nods to it along the way, and I think that's very cool.
Yeah, and the gang of kids with bikes,
always on the bikes.
Yeah.
And instead of them flying on the bikes, she flips that truck over.
Right.
They're coming to get her. It's very dangerous to be around 11 though, because these government people are so intent on getting her back. They literally will kill or fuck with anybody that gets in their way. So she understands that, and as she's connecting to these kids and actually having real friendships that she's never had before, she wants to protect them. And I think that's very sweet.
And I think that's one of the things that makes the first season better than the following seasons, because it's more focused on 11's ability to protect her friends, rather than her friend. Later on, the friends become, I don't want to say too capable, too powerful to overcome the government, to deal with the government forces. And that's a little hard. It's a little hard to suspend my disbelief with that. But when 11 is involved, even though it's fantastical, it makes more sense, because she does have this power. She looks like a little girl, but she is a formidable force, and she is a force to be reckoned with, and the government knows that. And I like that. I like that, she doesn't look like a formidable force, but she is, and that's one of the things I like.
And also, it's not all encompassing powers either. Like when she uses her powers, it depletes her, so she can't just blow everything up and walk away. It takes a lot out of her when she has to use these powers.
Right. She doesn't have that Superman factor where you're not worried about her at all. You still get worried about her because she does get weak, and then she's vulnerable.
Yeah. So Will isn't the only one that gets kidnapped. We also have Barb.
Right.
The most tragic figure of season 1 of maybe the whole series there is, because everybody is so worried about Will. Nobody gives a fuck about Barb. She disappears, and they're like, "Nah, she ran off with some boy or something." So
yeah, I guess that would be a criticism of season 1, is that there's certain characters who clearly have plot armor, who they don't want to sacrifice, and others who they're okay to sacrifice, and that one of those would be Barb, I guess, or the guy in the diner. It's kind of lets you know that they're serious, that there is risk, there's deaths going on, that doesn't shy away from that. But these characters, they do get out of quite a few scrapes that they probably wouldn't have in real life.
No. Well, the thing is, the one thing that really upset me about the Barb Will dichotomy was when Barb was taken, she was killed immediately. Like, she was pulled down into the upside down into the pool, and beaten and eaten, whatever happened, and wrapped up, and that was it. Will, so we don't really get to see, because Will ends up surviving because he spends the whole time in the upside down hiding up until the very end when he finally does get captured. But even then, he's not killed. He's just hooked up to this thing that the Demogorgon sticks in his mouth and keeps him alive, though. So why wasn't Will killed right away? And how did this little kid survive, this 11-year-old kid survive for that long in the underneath, or the upside down? It just...
Right.
Why would they should have at least had Barb survival? They should have kept it, had her survive for a little while, and then they kill, instead of killing her right away. At least I thought so.
Yeah.
That didn't make sense to me.
It's odd. The story is kind of like, it's almost all about Will, but he becomes a vehicle for all the other characters. Like, Will is hardly in this season, except but it is all about it revolves around him, so it's kind of strange in that way.
Pretty much everybody is connected to Will, and that's how we get with his brother Jonathan, and Nancy, who they end up being friends. Nancy, who is Mike's sister. Everybody is all connected to Will in some way, and Nancy is Barb's best friend, so she's pretty much the only one that's out there saying, "What the fuck happened to my friend? Like, what do we do?" And everybody else just ignores it. So we get that fake out where the government facility doesn't want them to keep looking for Will, so there's a body in the creek, or the quarry. That's what it was. That's a really interesting part of the show, and how Joyce just would not believe that it was her son, even though it looked exactly like him.
Right. And that was another surprise that I wasn't anticipating, was they find this body, and you're like, okay, where is this going? And then the cop Hopper, and I really like his character. I like it when the good guys are flawed individuals.
He is very flawed.
I'm conflicted about certain aspects of the show, because on one hand, I like these characters. I like Hopper. But I kind of see him doing things that I don't really think he would be motivated to do in real life. Like, what causes him to cross the lines on so many occasions to such a far degree that I don't see that in, being realistic, like in real life, would I picture a cop, a troubled, cop who is already kind of skating on thin ice in life, going that far beyond the, like what he does is he's sneaking around and going into the morgue, and he ends up cutting into this boy who looks like a real, body, just to discover that it's full of, stuffing, and it's a fake body. I mean, that's going pretty far out there.
Plus, he also seems to have abilities too that, like he takes down, like the state cops come in to protect the body so that nobody figures out what has happened. And he gets around all of them. He's able to do that. And he's able to break into this government facility, not once, but twice. He does get away with a lot of stuff. I mean, he is a great guy and everything, but he is just a man.
Yeah, he's holding government officials at gunpoint and everything.
Yeah, I think one of that's the reason that they introduced the fact that he had a daughter that died. I think they're trying to make that his motivation for wanting to find Will, because he doesn't want to have it to think about another dead kid. But you're right, it does go so far that like when he broke into the facility, it was just like. What cop would do this, no matter what they thought? And that was well before he had any idea that there was really anything super iffy going on. He just had a couple inklings about it. So I totally understand that.
Yeah. And
go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say that the loss of his kid kind of it plays into his finding of 11 and kind of becoming her adopted father.
Yeah.
Which I thought was kind of cool. Yeah.
Yeah. They have a very interesting and also flawed relationship too.
Yeah.
So, my good friend Julie says that Will's castle is a sort of like young child magic, which is also very much like, when he hides there in the upside down, that's like a Stephen King theme as well. The kind of idea that things in a child's world is magic, and that his Byers Castle or Byers Fort or whatever that he goes to is magical to him because it's where he goes to feel safe. So that's an interesting thought. It's true. There is a lot of that. They have a lot of they have childhood beliefs. They believe in greater things because they don't understand the entire world around them yet.
And an interesting aspect about that, which to this day has not been elucidated, is always in the beginning of the season, they establish that they establish the antagonist in their game. Somehow, like they're playing their Dungeons and Dragons and their enemy is a Demogorgon. And then in the next season, and then in real life, their enemy is a Demogorgon. And then in the beginning of the next season, their enemy is this Mind Flayer in the Dungeons and Dragons game. And then in the season, their enemy in real life is the Mind Flayer. And then in the third season, it's this zombie horde is their enemy in the Dungeons and Dragons game in the beginning. And then in real life, you have the Mind Flayer turning hordes of people into these into its own army, so they're essentially zombies, and that is never really explained how that connection that these is that just ham-fisted foreshadowing, or is there something in the story that's linking these things?
Yeah, I never thought of it that way. That is true, that they seem to have this ability to foreshadow what's coming. But
right.
Maybe that's more of the child magic, that children are a lot smarter and stronger than we give them credit for. So
yeah.
So we have the Demogorgon in the first season that keeps coming back and trying to kill everybody pretty much. and the only one that seems to be able to do anything about it is 11. And so she sacrifices herself in order to stop the Demogorgon. She disappears. We don't really know what happens to her, except we figure out, at the very, very end that she seems to be in the woods. Like she just moved space somehow. It's another kind of fake out, but it's very beautiful that she does this because she finally has this connection to people in the world that she loves, she cares about, as opposed to the person she called Papa growing up, who used her and made her do all these experiments and stuff and turned her, she herself feels like she's the monster. Because she knows she's the one who opened the door and she's the one that's caused all this. So she sacrifices herself in order to save her friends, who she considers her family now.
Yeah, there's a scene that stands out to me this scene that stands out to me is when she's trying to get away, and she ends up killing two guards. She snaps their necks with her mind, and it's the first time she kills anybody. And the person she refers to as Papa, this government official who is essentially the closest thing I guess she has to a guardian,
Dr. Martin Brenner.
Yeah, he reacts like he's proud of her.
Mm-hmm.
Like normally, like a normal relationship, this would be horrific. Oh my God, what have you done? He's proud of her. Oh, you finally did it. And then, he picks her up and carries her away like, she's his little baby. And it's such a twisted reversal. And that scene always stood out to me, that's how she was raised, and that's not who she is.
He was trying to get her to kill this cat, with her mind, and she just couldn't do it. And so he was going to punish her for it and throw her in this hole that's where she goes when she's in trouble. And that's the reason she stopped them and killed them. So, and then he does. He's just like, and she has this look of fear on her face because she thinks something worse is going to happen. And then he does that, thing where he picks her up, and because she's tired and she's sick because she used her powers. But it's touching in a way, but that's the only real connection she's ever had is with this person. And then she finds she finds Mike and Lucas and Dustin and has this new family, and then Hopper and Joyce and everybody, it expands after that. So I think one of the cutest things too is when Joyce is introduced to her and they put her in the isolation tank pool, and she's scared of what she saw because she saw that Barb was dead. Joyce pulls her in and holds her and tells her it's okay. It is the mother to her that she's never had. And it's a really beautiful, touching moment, I think.
Yeah. So, and eventually she goes and tries to seek out her biological family. And that's kind of like a big tangent that the show goes on in the second season. Yeah. And it's kind of unpredictable, and she ends up making a triumphant return that is very powerful to save her adopted family, the people who she considers to be her real family, I think. She
goes out. We're on, we can talk about season 2. We're done with season 1 anyway. She after she's for a little while in the second season, she's stuck in this cabin with Hopper because he doesn't want anybody to know that she's still alive. He doesn't want the government coming and taking her away. But she gets sick of it, and she doesn't like the rules. She doesn't like the fact that he keeps breaking his promises. She wants to go see Mike because they were kind of almost a thing at the end of the first season, but then she sees him with this other girl and thinks that they're together even though they're not. So she takes off and looks to find her mother. Do you remember what happened when she found her real mother?
Right. Her real mother was kind of like in this vegetative state where she was locked into endless loop of this memory, this traumatic memory of what happened with
Dr.
with
Brenner.
with Dr. Brenner.
Mm-hmm.
And 11 finds her in this state and has to use her power, her mind power, to kind of delve into her mother's memories and learn about herself too in this way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a very tragic situation.
Because Dr. Brenner, had drugged her mother and then taken 11 away and told her that, she had a miscarriage, that the baby had died. But she knew on some level that this wasn't true, and she felt it, that her child was still alive, but had been taken from her and nobody would listen. And that, along with the drugs, she did a lot of acid even during the pregnancy. That was part of the tests she did with Dr. Brenner, how she got involved with him in the first place. Just fucked with her mind enough that she ended up in this, just, completely outside of the world with all this stuff going on in her head, but she's not communicating with anyone. She just sits in front of a TV all day. That's all that's left of her.
Right. And it parallels what happened to Joyce Byers. It's like the human beings were the monsters, were the demigorgons who stole 11, and her mother never got the resolution that Joyce did, and her craziness also wasn't really craziness. It was what was done to her.
Yeah.
And there was a sense to it, but only 11 was equipped to see it.
Yeah.
And make sense of these cryptic words that were coming out that didn't make sense to anyone else unless you could see inside of her mind and see what they were actually referred to.
Mm-hmm. But then she realizes that there's nothing there. She's found her mother, but there's never going to be a relationship there. She can't really stay there, even though her aunt offers, that she can stay and they can be a family. So she takes off. And then probably what I think is the dumbest part of the entire series, that storyline when she meets one of the other girls that was in the program, number 8. And she's teenagers and they're just doing stupid. They're going after people that worked at the facility, and they're working with them, but they're also stealing and stuff to stay alive. And that's just, I don't know. How did you feel about that storyline?
I agree. It felt like it was out of place. It felt like they were unsure about that direction and decided not to go that route. And it wasn't really all that necessary.
No.
To the story. It kind of just explains away her absence so that she can swoop in and do the big rescue at the end, which was very cool. But I think maybe it could have been handled differently.
Absolutely. It didn't, you're right. It just didn't feel like it fit at all. Plus that's how the season started. Exactly. Like the very opening scene of the second season was these kids, trying to run away from the cops. You have no idea who these fucking kids are. And then you don't see them again for a while either. So it just seemed pointless at the time. And then, it really just, it doesn't fit. And I think everybody complains about that. It just, it doesn't work. But she does come in. So you said that there's the mind flare. How does that's the big monster of the second season. How does that come into play?
Will has this connection to the Upside Down, and he's drawing pictures of this image that's haunting him. Looks like a big tentacles coming out of the clouds. And he keeps seeing this image everywhere. And basically this is the thing.
Also keeps flashing back, like he keeps kind of popping into the Upside Down and then back too.
Yeah, his time there, it gave him this connection, and it's this mind flare that's really behind the Demogorgons. So whereas in the first season there was one, and it was wreaking all this havoc. Now there's an army of them, and this mind flare is what is controlling them.
Yeah.
So now suddenly the town is this dangerous place, and they get around through these subterranean tunnels. Or wait, was that? Yeah, that was the second season.
Yeah.
So they could pop up at anywhere, and there's this sense that nowhere is safe, and everybody's in danger. And there are a lot of close calls with a lot of the main characters, Hopper and getting trapped down in the subterranean tunnels. There's people doing crazy things like jumping down into dark tunnels.
Yeah. Even in the first season, when Nancy goes in through that door in the tree, and she's in the upside down, and then she's just like walking around. It's like, what, why is she doing this? And she's able to escape it and be fine. There is a lot of real close calls with the bigger characters that doesn't seem to affect anybody. We're also introduced to Bob, who I think it's Sean Astin is playing Bob. I never thought I would see Winona Ryder and Sean Astin making out. It was pretty funny. But he's he's kind of this sweet and leveling character for Nancy and for Will and for Jonathan a little bit. Jonathan has a problem with it, but he's a teenage boy, so.
Yeah, he's such a sweet guy that, and in our cynical world, it makes you wonder, okay, what's wrong with this guy? There's something that's got to be wrong with him, but there really isn't. No. He's just a good dude. And of course, he has to get butchered.
Yeah.
He has to get butchered.
He just he wants to go, turn the lights back on, and he just wants to help because he's so naive to everything for the entire season. And then finally at the end, when the demon dogs or whatever they call them come out and everything's going to shit at the facility, he really steps up and he really cares about saving Nancy and saving everybody, but he just isn't strong enough. He just isn't, I don't know if maybe they had told him more to begin with and he was more knowledgeable about how dangerous it was beforehand, but yeah, he gets eaten alive and it's very sad.
Yeah. He doesn't he's in the dark about everything that's going on, and they keep it from him until the very last moment when he gets to see things for himself, and they have to explain to him what the deal is.
One of the main things in the season 2 is that Dustin, who in the first season, he's very flaky and stuff, but he's also kind of the one that really tells everybody, shut the fuck up, let's just work on this and think about things. He's centered and he thinks critically and is able to help a lot with that. But in the second season, he finds this, this thing, it looks like a tadpole in his trash, and he takes it in, and even though everybody keeps telling him this is fucked, let's kill it, and he has this attachment to it, and it ends up growing up to be one of these demon dogs. So that really upset me, because it was like he was so smart and so centered beforehand, and now he's just doing something so dumb.
And then the thing ends up killing their cat, and he realizes that he's something has to be done about this, but it ends up getting away, crawling away, and it does end up growing an attachment to Dustin, right? And it ends up helping them, because if memory serves.
Yeah, because he uses the thing with the Milky Ways to keep him and the other ones from attacking them when they're down in the tunnel trying to help out. So it does work out for them because of that attachment, but it's still the entire time that he has it, and it's growing bigger and weirder all the time. And he thinks he's discovered this new species, and it's like, no, dude, you live in a place that has fucking demogorgons and smoke monsters and shit. Like, maybe kill that thing. So.
And another thing is, at what point do you fucking move? Like, just get the hell out of town.
They should have done that at the beginning of the first season, especially since Will was, clearly having a connection and having these flashbacks. Take him away from where this is happening. I know they end up doing it at the end of the third season. She finally fucks off, but it's like, why did it take so long to figure that out?
Yeah, and I'm very curious as to where they're going with it, though.
Yeah, like how are they gonna continue the story, outside, if they're gonna come back, and they don't know that Hopper is still alive. They think he's dead. Yeah, I have no idea. But I think that's very cool that Joyce took 11 in, though. That now 11 has, again, like I said in the first season, she acted motherly to her. But then, now that Hopper is gone, she has offered, she's never had a mother at all. She's had two father figures, but never a mother. I think that's going to be a big part of the fourth season, that kind of dynamic between the two. So how do they defeat the main monster in the second season? Or they don't really defeat him, but how do they fix everything?
Right. It comes down to Hopper and 11 teaming up and going back to the government facility, which has been quarantined and abandoned basically, but so they have to go through this army of Demogorgons, and 11 has to seal up this gateway that's been forced open by the government, and she's the only one who can do it. Her powers of telekinesis, and she has to basically use everything she has to close this gate and separate our world from the upside down, where this Demogorgon is coming from.
Yeah,
and she uses all of her strength to close this gate and collapses, and Hopper has to care for her.
Yeah, and it works. I mean, she's able to close it, and it seems like everything's okay until the very end, when we notice that the mind flare is actually still lurking. So there's something for season 3, and I think that was a good. I'm glad that they didn't, because it was such a powerful thing. I'm glad they didn't just completely obliterate it and then move on to another monster in the next one, because he just becomes stronger and has this new ability in the third season. Well, like you said, he starts making this zombie army of people. I can't remember the name of the character. Him and his sister, stepsister, are introduced in the second season, and he becomes kind of the conduit between the mind flare in the third season and bringing in these people to become part of this horde.
Right. It's Billy and her Billy and his stepsister Max.
Max, that's what it was.
Yeah. Who's Mad Max? They introduced her as, but like at the end of the second season, there's a very cool scene where, what was it, the diner, or I'm trying to remember, or the arcade.
The arcade.
Where it looks normal, and then it like pans down to the upside down world, and you see that the Demogorgon is like hovering over, not the Demogorgon, the mind flayers like hovering over it very ominously. So it's not resolved. It's still there. It's just blocked. Yeah. And when it comes to controlling human beings, it's almost like it's just doing the same thing it was doing with the Demogorgons, only it figures that it can get farther by using people rather than Demogorgons. Rather than using monsters, it can infiltrate by taking over the minds of people.
Yeah.
Rather than
animals. It doesn't have the gateway anymore to send the Demogorgons anyway. So this is the only way that he can take control.
Yeah, and he takes control of Will, who he's kind of lost again, but only he's physically there, but his mind is trapped, and the Demogorgon's mind takes over Will, and this new Billy character, who is abusive jock type guy.
Total asshole.
Yeah, this complete stereotypical asshole in every way who you're really supposed to dislike. And and Max is his stepsister, who is brought into the fold, is brought into the group, very reluctantly, and very, everyone is conflicted about it and they fight about it, but eventually they take her in, and eventually she ends up finding out about all these fantastical things going on. And I don't know, it's kind of a coincidence that her brother would be,
Yeah.
So it stays connected. So all these characters stay connected like that, through these coincidences.
Yeah, you wonder how big the town actually is as this keeps happening, but it works.
Yeah. And it gets pretty outlandish with the Russians, They come in and have this base that's deep underground beneath the mall.
Yeah, and the Starport Mall, which is one of the main parts of the third season, which is actually right down where they filmed it, is right down the street from me. It's not that far, which I thought was pretty.
Oh, really?
My son found that out and he was like, "Can we go? It's super cool." Like the show.
So is that an actual mall, or is it? It's
an old. They closed it down. It doesn't. There's nothing there anymore. But it was a real mall at one point. Yeah, that's where they filmed that. Everything. I'm pretty sure everything in Stranger Things is filmed in Georgia. There's a lot of stuff that they film here. So, but that becomes one of the bases. Steve, who has changed a lot. He has really grown as a character. Starts working at this ice cream shop, and he actually, had befriended Dustin from the season earlier, and then Lucas's sister Erica, and then the girl that worked there too, and they decode what the Russians are saying and figure out what they're trying to do. But they also, again, coincidences. It so happens that the Russians' underground base is in the mall itself. So they figure it out as well. And that's how they get down there, and they get kidnapped and everything. But I think that was one of my favorite parts, the Steve Dustin thing, because Steve was such a ginormous asshole, like super jock at the beginning of season 1, and did a lot of really shitty stuff, especially to Jonathan. But he grew, he would have never been caught dead hanging out with some kid, let alone some really super nerdy kid. But they had this bond because they needed to help each other in season 2. So in season 3, they're actually friends, and then help each other even more. So, and then Dustin has this antenna thing that he has set up to talk to his girlfriend, who he met at science camp. And nobody believes that he has this girlfriend, but that's how they end up intercepting the Russian communications. And so they tape it and they figure it out. But one of the things with Billy is they give him a kind of an out for his, the way he acts, because they show him with his father, who's super abusive. And then, so we kind of feel for him. And then in the end, he actually ends up saving them and sacrificing himself for the kids, especially for Max, who, so he does have, a bit of a heart. He is a real human being. He's just, the entire time before that, he was a complete and utter asshole. So.
Right. And his redeeming qualities is the very thing that enables the group to be saved. Like, because 11 goes into his memories, like she went into her mother's memories, and sees Billy's, fondest memory with his mother and going surfing. And you get to see Billy as not just some asshole. He actually is a human being with a life who is very troubled, and that things went wrong. It could have been anybody. Yeah. And she uses that memory to help him in the end reconnect with his humanity. And that redeemed him.
Yeah, it did. And it showed that he really did have a heart and really, it made sense that he would sacrifice himself because he was a real three-dimensional human being as opposed to just this straight asshole all the way.
Yeah, I like it when stories don't make these one-dimensional characters where like I said with Hopper, he's the good guy and you like him, but he's flawed. And in the same way, the villain is not just 100% evil for no reason whatsoever. He is flawed, but he also has some redeeming qualities.
Yeah. So in this season, because we know from before that Hopper and Joyce have a past of some sort. We don't know if it's just because they've been in the town together, if they've slept together at some point, but they have a connection. They know each other pretty well. But in season 3, they end up teaming up in order to fight the Russians and figure the shit out. But that's really interesting that they go in that direction because you feel like those are the two main adults the whole time, and they have such good chemistry, as awesome as Bob was. And my friend Julie said that Sean Astin was actually only supposed to be in one episode, but he was so likable that's why they kept him on for the rest of the season. So, but they seem to work together really well. Do you think that they were trying to hint at something romantic there, or was it just a friendship sort of deal?
I think they're trying to go in that direction, and even comically so with their ally. What was his name again? The guy
Alexei?
that Alexei,
the Russian,
the guy that the translator.
Yeah, I got that. I can find it.
He also helped the kids on a couple of occasions, but he's kind of like this underground journalist conspiracy guy who just so happens to be right.
Yeah, because he started off as he was a private investigator for Barb's family. And he had all of these theories that it was aliens, that it was, he just kept coming to Hopper with all these ideas that, who was it and how did this happen? Murray Bauman, that's who it was.
Okay.
But then they, Nancy and Jonathan end up going to him and finally admitting the whole story. And that's how he ends up getting hooked up with Hopper and Nancy, or not Nancy, Hopper and Joyce, because he knows what's going on, but can also translate. And so he becomes an important part of the story. And then they meet Alexei, who is just adorable, the Russian that helps them, that they kidnap, which is another hilarious thing, because here's like this cop and this single mom, and they kidnap this Russian and take him out in the woods. And and
that's another kind of likable character who has to get killed. by the Terminator.
Shocking way too, because it's in the they take him out in the middle of that fair, and it's just you figure something's gonna happen, but you see it coming as soon as Alexei's eyes, he sees the guy coming over, and but you get kind of attached to him. He really was kind of adorable in that,
and that guy. It seemed like that guy was obviously supposed to be like the Terminator. It just seemed like an impression of the Terminator, that Russian guy.
Yeah, because he was completely unstoppable. There was nothing that could be done about it. So
and then he ended up being their main obstacle, Hopper and Joyce's main obstacle by the end of the season. Whereas the Mind Flayer was the main obstacle for the kids. This lone Russian soldier was the main obstacle for Hopper. Yeah.
Where, in the first season, he was taking out, hordes of state cops and stuff like that. But now he's got this one man that he's up against, and there's, he almost gets killed by him so many times. So, with the horde of zombies, what is the Mind Flayer's reasoning for it? What is he after?
Well, it started out with rats, and he kind of like, you wonder what's going on, and that's how like Nancy and Jonathan start out is investigating what's going on with this rat, and then it's like working its way up to humans. uh, and it's kind of like this amorphous blob that can't be killed. It just split. It's kind of like Terminator again, like the T-1000. You know, it splits up and then can rejoin and
every time the rats explode, and then they congeal together, these blobs.
Genuine, and it's now it's just cool. But if I had seen that back then, back in the 80s, it would have been terrifying to me back when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
But now it's just a really cool creature, really really neat. The special effects are really good too. But
another thing that they couldn't have done back then. So
yeah, that definitely could. I mean, it would have been very different. But you know, like stop motion animation or something like that. But I honestly don't know the motive of the mind flare.
No, it's not. It's not really. Does he want to take over the town and then take over the rest of the world? Maybe it's not really clear. We know the motives for the Russians because they want to open up another gate like the other one. They knew that happened and that's why they're doing this. But as for the mind flare, no. So you know, he ends up getting defeated, possibly, you know, at least kicked out of their dimension. But then we end the season with Hopper missing, and you don't know what has happened. But then you see back in Russia, there's a base where they're feeding people to Demogorgons, and it's implied that he's there. So you know, we don't know totally. We know now because of they talked about the next season, and we see that he's still alive and he's out in Russia. But we didn't at the end of season 3. It wasn't confirmed that he was alive. It was just kind of implied that he somehow was taken to this base in Russia. So that was, that was hard. Like, Hopper is probably my favorite character. So that was like thinking for that moment that he was dead, I was like, fuck this show. I'm done with this.
Yeah, I like Hopper too. He's a good character.
So we'll talk about themes a little bit. We can talk first. I want to talk about the main themes of each season, because I think the first season's theme is really friendship. You know, you have the really close friendship between the boys, the friendship between Jonathan and Nancy, the sort of friendship between Hopper and Joyce, and then 11 becoming friends with all of these people.
Yeah.
And then the second season is more about love. You have 11 and Mike, who had started something beforehand, and she feels the need to get back to him because she has these feelings for him. You got Bob and Joyce. Joyce finally has somebody to love her, to take care of her, because her husband had been such a horrible person. Max and the whole Lucas Dustin thing back and forth. That was really interesting that, they were so against her at the beginning, especially Lucas, or especially Dustin. And then, they finally bring her into the fold, and then they both fall in love with her cute little crushes. So, and as a father-daughter thing, you also have Hopper and 11. They grow to love each other, but it's a very dysfunctional love at times, because neither of them know. She does not know how to be a daughter, and it's been so long since he's been a father, and he's never been a father to a teenage girl. So they're kind of thrown into this situation. What did you think about that, their relationship, especially in season 2?
Oh, that went kind of in an unexpected direction, because I thought it's set up to be like a happily ever after type thing where it fits, but then there it is, trouble in paradise. There is that conflict. There is overbearing, overprotective, but in an understandable way. And she feels suffocated, literal cabin fever, right?
Yeah.
and so and she's at that teenage rebellious stage. So I guess it makes sense for the story for them to be conflicted, and it gives her a reason to go off on her own.
Yeah, and then in season 3, he so desperately wants to protect her and becomes so overprotective and overbearing. He fucks with her relationship with Mike.
Yeah,
it's so sad.
Yeah, it's one of those devices and stories that kind of gives you anxiety a little bit, because you just want to reach in and say, no, he doesn't feel that way. No, she doesn't feel that way. You got it all wrong. Stop misunderstanding each other, please.
Yeah.
But you can't.
But he does write that letter that he doesn't give to her, and she gets it after they think he's dead. And it's such a beautifully written letter, and it really tells her how much he cares about her, and that he did all this really crazy kind of asshole-ish stuff because he just wanted to protect her. When it's understandable his desire to be overprotective because of what happened to his actual daughter. So
right.
It does cross a line in a lot of ways. One of the you had mentioned how it's like a Stephen King show, but directed by Steven Spielberg. That's one of the big themes of the entire series. There are different things like the psychic children themes, the flawed characters with addiction problems. Hopper seems to have that. He drinks a lot. He's always taking all these pills. Things that kind of knock in the dark, things that they don't really understand, these monsters that these children don't understand, kind of like it. There seems to be a lot of connections between Stephen King, like you said, and the story. Is there any others that you can think of that you can connect?
The camaraderie of these kids working against the monster. So that's also very much like Stephen King. And the just putting it out there without explaining everything about it too, that's also very Stephen King.
Yeah.
I would, if I didn't know any better, I would say that it was Stephen King. But
yeah, it really translated that way.
Right.
Another one is the whole cops are dumb thing. Like, other than the main characters, whatever, if you've noticed, the cops, all the rest of the cops are just really stupid, and that happens a lot in Stephen King stories. Like that one part where the cops are out in the field with all the rotting stuff and the slime, and Hopper's like, this is probably toxic, don't touch it. And one guy's just like poking at it with his finger. They're just not the smartest people on the planet, which is why a lot of the kids can get away with a lot of shit, because there isn't really a strong police force in the town, to be honest, other than Hopper. And the only reason he's this way is because he was a cop in the city to begin with. He wasn't some, backwoods cop like the rest of the town. So it's a really interesting thing that connects, because that happens a lot in Stephen King stories. That's something I noticed. Family is a big theme as well. And I think I really like the way all of the parents are portrayed, because many of them they try so hard, and they're good parents in that way, but they're extremely flawed. Do you remember Nancy and Mike's mom? How she kept coming to her kids and saying, you can tell me anything, and she kept trying. And I know that feeling. I do that with my son too. You can tell me anything you want. You can talk to me about whatever. But she would keep fucking up, because she would, like, when she found out Nancy had lost her virginity to Steve, and she didn't deal with that very well. And that's the reason these kids don't seem to trust her. But,
right. And their dad might as well. I was going to say the dad might as well have not even been there at all. Yeah, no. He was totally worthless.
even when stuff was right in front of his face too, he just it didn't matter to him. Other than Hopper, the fathers don't seem to be a big, decent presence in the show. So,
well, and then Sam, wait, Why do I want to? Oh, I want because I want to call him Samwise Gamgee. What's his What's his name in the show again?
Which one?
The guy that played Sam, Joyce's boyfriend.
Oh, Sean Astin?
Sean, yeah.
Yeah, Bob is his name on the show.
Bob. Okay,
Yeah.
I want to call him Sam in the show.
Yeah, I gotcha.
But, yeah, he was a good father figure, and as well as Hopper. But not when I say good, I mean they have their flaws and everything, but at least they're there. But yeah, the other guys like Nancy's dad and Nancy and Mike's dad and Billy's dad, Billy and Max. Yeah, they're not very good, and but that's real life too. I mean, there's guys that